All right, everybody, welcome to Build a Digital Community for Your Small Business and Get Paid. This is part of the Web and Beyond webinars, Marketing and Managing Your Small Business on the Web and Beyond. And for those of you who don't know me, I'm Sidney-Smith. I am the president of W3 Consulting and the managing director of W3C Web Services. And so W3 Consulting is a digital training company, and we help small businesses understand how to market and manage their business using web, mobile, and social technologies. And so we're out there training small businesses on how to use this technology and consulting them in terms of how to set up and implement digital marketing strategies. The W3C Web Services is a managed WordPress hosting and web hosting company. We also do Microsoft 365, and we help folks with Google Workspace implementations and all kinds of other fun things, domain name registrations and otherwise. So if you have any of those needs, feel free to reach out and we'll be happy to help you out in that regard. A little bit about myself as well. I also happen to be an Evernote certified consultant and one of the Evernote regional leaders for North America. And I also happen to be a Google Small Business Advisor, and I'm the Google Small Business Advisor for productivity, hence the Google Workspace work. And so very tied in with the Google world. And I love Google. And so if you have questions about Google, feel free to email me or tweet at me, and I'll be happy to help you with those items. So with that out of the way, let's talk about the agenda for today. Our agenda for today is fairly simple. What we're going to do is we're going to walk through the why of building a digital community. Really, I want you to understand why it's important to build a digital community. We're then going to hop into the strategies that I know work. There are more strategies than the ones I'll be talking about, but I'll be talking about 3 strategies that I think really help to build a community both quickly, at speed, and help you scale that community to the right size you need for your particular business. Then we're going to get into monetizing your platform. And this is always one of those cases where how do you effectively monetize a small business community, a community that is surrounded and managed by your small business? And then, of course, the other concept of getting started. And so many people just come to me and they say, well, I just really don't know how to get started with starting a community. And so I'll give you some of those tips. I have 7 steps to help you understand how to get started with a small business community. I'll leave some time at the end for Q&A if there are questions, but otherwise, hopefully I'll answer most of them during the seminar itself. And so let's get started. So why build a digital community? This is a really heady topic, but I find it to be something that over the past decade plus that I've been doing this kind of work, I have really found it important for people to understand how important community is, and really digital community is, to small business. And we can really relate this to the offline world. In the offline world, if you have a business on Main Street, the reality is that your community, I always talk about the 5-mile square radius of the people who are around you, they're really the dominant supporting group of people for your business. And when we think about that dominant supporting community for your business, that 5-mile square radius is really important to you. And if you're not paying attention to that, then you are losing out on the bulk majority of your business. That short distance around you is where most of local business buys from you. And now in the digital space, we don't need the whole country. We just need maybe 10 miles, a 10-mile radius, maybe a 15-mile radius. And so digital communities end up still being highly local. And we're creating convenience for our small business audience to be able to interact and engage with us. And so don't think about this as being, I have to have everybody in the country or everybody in the world following and interacting with me. It's really more about how do I engage people in a more convenient way without them having to constantly be interacting with me in person in some fashion. And that's where digital community really came into play for me, because I started to see, as the web developed into social media, I started to see the fact that we are going digital. And then, of course, the pandemic happened. And what we learned in the pandemic was that digital is here to stay. And we're going more and more to digital. And what I put up on screen here is actually part of the executive summary that was put out by by Facebook, and this is the Facebook 2021 global Small Business Report. And they actually they surveyed, I think, 35,000 small businesses to get an understanding here of what was really happening and throughout the course of the pandemic. And so this is the 2021 Global State of Small Business Report. And what Facebook determined was that businesses that were doing digital sales were actually more resilient to the changes that were happening during the pandemic. Those that adopted digital technologies in some facet of their business, and those that were doing digital sales were less likely to report a decline in overall sales in their business. This is a remarkable statistic. And so this is really important for us all to take into account. And this is not just for product businesses. I think so many people misunderstand that product businesses are for e-commerce, and for those of you who are in service or other kinds of industry classes, you don't and can't do e-commerce. Digital is for everybody, and we all need to be involved in it. But we know that digital sales creates resilience. We have seen that in the pandemic, and we see it over and over again in all of the data that we look at. But next is more important, which is when we look at the concept of the different verticals, we see that there's resistance in certain types of verticals for varying reasons. But what we can see is if you look at the top right corner of the chart, most of the things that we're doing out there in the world are going digital, which means that most consumers, right, consumer retail, automotive, things that we come into contact with, basic materials. We can see consumer goods is right there in the center, and it's mediating back and forth. We're going to see more banking. We're going to see more healthcare move toward digital. But as these things continue to progress, I mean, I could imagine 10 years ago, all of this stuff was down in the bottom left in terms of urgency. Now, all of that is just shifting and shifting closer toward more and more urgency. And I think what we mistake here is that like banking and consumer goods, we're so used to buying things on Amazon and doing digital banking and mobile banking. I can't remember the last time I walked into my bank to do banking, right? The reality is many of us have already done a lot of this work. And so we are seeing more and more urgency toward doing more digital and doing that digital transformation. So when we think about digital community, we have to remember that our audience is already on digital and they're already engaging in communities online. Think about the power and depth of Facebook's reach, right? Not just in politics, but in everyday life. Facebook is kind of a catch-all term for social networking. We have to remember that people are in that mindset. Consumers are already there, and that means these industries, certainly the ones on the top right-hand corner of this chart, are feeling the pressure to go in that direction. And then we go further, which is to understand that there's a lot of underlying data actually in this slide deck. So when you registered, I got your email address, and I will email the recording, and in the slide deck for this is a set of links that have some really good data underlying it. So just look out for the link to this. This is a live Google Slides presentation. And in it, I have some really good articles about this concept. But the reality is that what the articles talk about, especially around the idea of community-centric ecosystems, is that businesses that have communities become more resilient, right? So we know the world is going toward digital sales. Consumers are in those digital communities and they're engaging, and businesses that add community to their perspective become more resilient, right? That's what we're seeing in the data. But what I really found fascinating is that over the past decade, I had always been looking at the concept of community from a genesis perspective. Like, how does a business start from the very format of having a community? And the idea here is that really, if you're a business owner and you have people who support you, you have a network, those people are the ones who are going to basically, stand behind you when things go wrong. And that could be economic downturn. That could be when you make a mistake. We're all human. We make mistakes. And therefore, when we do make mistakes, we want those people who are in our community to really stand behind us and sometimes correct our mistakes, right? Tell us that we've made a mistake, and they can do that in a way that is caring and compassionate. Community is just so important. And what I found is that we're all actually doing some level of community all the time. We just don't recognize it. And so understand it from this perspective. As hunter-gatherers, right? In anthropology, right? We learned all of these functions of building family and building tribes and how to have enlightened self-interest, how to collaborate. And those things, which is the concepts I teach, which are giving, getting, and feeling a sense of belonging, listening, speaking, and connecting in the digital space, those are all built into us. We've always had these features in tribal and other groupings of humans. Wherever humans are, we're listening, we're giving our attention, we're giving of ourselves in some way, shape, or form. We're receiving, right? We're receiving love and affection, receiving money for services. All of those things are happening, and we have this sense of belonging, right? If you take that in any grouping, family, business, spiritual life, charitable life, friendships, you name it, all of those incorporate having some sense of giving, taking, and a sense of belonging. And so community was just always there. And I found that fascinating. I just thought, this is really something that works. If businesses could produce more community, right, and build stronger community, then they would just be more resilient. And then I thought, well, we have all of this social networking that's going on, and that's founded around community. And so businesses, of course, should start content marketing, because if they could effectively set up their content marketing, then of course they're going to have a stronger ability to find their community and then coalesce that community, consolidate them into a smaller space. And that's really where the concept of what I call the 3 Cs, community, content, and cash flow, came into being. And so that first foundational component is building the community. That's what we're going to talk about today. The second, of course, is content marketing, and the vehicle by which we both find new people out there in various social networks on the World Wide Web through effective SEO and content strategy there, and the content that we produce inside of our community to both engage and bring people closer toward sales is all built into that content marketing. And then, of course, cash flow. And cash flow is what is it that we're going to do in the community that will take somebody from not just knowing us and liking us and trusting us, but paying us for our product or service. And so that is really where the whole foundation of community content and cash flow came about. And so you can think of cash flow sales, but I needed another C for the 3 Cs. So community content and cash flow is how I see the world going forward, especially in the small business space, especially in the local small business space. And remember, this is always with a local mindset in play. We're not trying to create a national or international community. We're really trying to create hyper-local, hyper-targeted communities whereby the people who are going to be our likeliest buyers are brought together and then engage through effective content, and through that effective content become customers. So if you have any questions about that, feel free to throw questions in the chat, in either chat. I know that some folks are joining me from the Web and Beyond community. Some of you are joining me from the webinar channel. So feel free to throw chat questions in either of those, and I'll pick them up in and during Q&A. So that's really the primary function, that is why I'm so kind of bullish on the idea of building a community. And so now let's switch gears and talk a little bit about community content strategies. That is, what are the things that help build communities? Before I get into, in the latter portion, talking about how to really set up a community and get started, I wanted to talk really about the content strategies so you can get an idea about how communities really generate traction. And so many people have struggles with understanding this. And so I just wanted to push us through these pieces so you had an understanding. The first community content strategy that I like to show people is, and these are not the only ones, these are just the ones that I tend to talk about as being effective for the types of clients I work with. But we have first up the challenge. The challenge is the idea of creating something that is a short-term set of steps that your target audience can take that will lead them toward becoming a community member. Okay, so that's the whole idea. We want to be able to build a community so that we can turn the content that we're producing in the community into basically little tiny breadcrumbs toward sales. Right? We know that that works. And so what we want to do is we want to be able to bring people into the community in consistent numbers that we can then engage, but we also want to filter out people who are not our ideal customers. And so something like a challenge is actually really helpful. In essence, what you're doing is you are filtering and vetting the people who are coming to you by virtue of something like the challenge. Now, the challenge is typically free and is usually good for business to consumer and business to business service businesses. So typically B2C and B2B service businesses can do a challenge really easily. If you are in a different industry or field, let me know and I can always try and help you with a challenge, strategy modification. But in essence, what you could do here is say you create a 7-day challenge or a 14-day challenge or a 30-day challenge, which is on the longer side. But the idea here is that you are trying to engage people in some kind of transformation. You want to help people go from where they are to where they want to be in some small fashion. I say small, okay? It needs to be something small that you can make sure the vast majority of the people who join the challenge are going to succeed at. And so, for example, if I were going to do a challenge, I'd probably do something around email because I love personal productivity and productivity technologies, and everybody has email issues. And so I love the idea of saying, okay, we're going to empty your inboxes in 7 days. And so what I would then do is create a sign-up page on my website, and whatever community platform I have will be set up, and we'll talk about that later. But now I have a sign-up page, and people sign up for this challenge to empty their email inbox. And then over the course of 7 days, each day they're going to get an email from me, and I might include in the email a video. Maybe I'll include some instructions by text. I might include an audio file that instructs people through this. But in essence, they're going to get some instructions from me for what steps they can take to get from email inbox 30,000 down to email inbox 0, having 0 emails in their inbox. And I'll walk them through steps each day of those 7 days until they get done. Now, after the challenge is over, right, I'm going to set a date. So I'm going to say the challenge starts on June 1st. And so sign up before June 1st, and we're going to run this for 7 days. And everybody who signs up is going to be able to do that. Now, of course, you have something to market. Now you have something that you can drive people toward. It's free. And so it's easy for people to sign up for it. They are going to read that challenge. And quite honestly, like if you have your email inbox completely under control, why would you sign up for the email inbox challenge, right? So I'm vetting out the people who feel like, oh, no, I don't have a problem, right? Which could be that they do have a problem, but they're just, being willfully ignorant of it. But the other side is that people who do want help and feel like they are productively challenged by virtue of their email inbox overflowing, they're going to sign up for the challenge. And if I want to do, say, productivity coaching or something like that, then these are my people. Those are the people I want to get in front of. And they're the people who I want to bring into my community. Okay. So I would be filtering out the people who I don't want in my community. I'm filtering in the people. I'm inviting in the people that I do want into my community. They sign up, we run the challenge. And then of course, I close the challenge with an offer for them to join the community. And just as a pro tip here, what you can do is you can run another challenge that starts immediately upon the prior challenge ending, right? And that's the call to action from the close of the challenge. So say that you send 7 emails, right? 1 every day of the challenge. On that 7th day, it's going to be, hurrah, you made it. You got to email inbox 0. And now let's get your desk cleared. Let's get your downloads folder on your desktop cleared. What's the next thing that we want to get empty? And let's do that together as a group. And so now you can bring people into the community, you can onboard them, and then run that next challenge that will ultimately then be something that they all want to engage in. But now you have them in the community, you have them inside the walls of your community, and you can do all kinds of fun things, right? You can monetize at that point. So we'll talk about how to monetize once they're in the community. But this is really the portion where you're actually generating and bringing people into the community in that way. Okay, so that's the challenge model. Again, like I said, throw any questions you have about that in there. Let's move right along then to the next big content strategy for bringing people to the community. How do you get those people in to the community? And the next content strategy is, of course, hosting an event. Events are really wonderful ways for being able to bring people together. You'll see that there's a thread throughout all of the things that I'm talking about in terms of content strategies. One of the fundamental units is that it has to be time bound. It cannot just be like, join my community whenever. You could just join if you'd like to. You cannot do that. If you say you can join anytime, then people will just never join. There's no pressure for them to be able to do that. But there's a little bit of FOMO here, and which is fear of missing out. And FOMO really does engage people in wanting to go from being non-active to active or activated to do that thing, right? That's why the challenge, I'm starting the challenge on June 1st, and then we're going to go, and then it's going to be over. So if you want to get your email inbox to zero, you have to join during this time frame to be able to do that. And sure, you might run that challenge again in like 3 months, okay? But they don't know that, and they shouldn't know that, because then the time pressure is on them to be able to join. And this is for a transformation that's going to do them good. So it's not, it's not like snake oil sales. You're really trying to do something good for those people to make sure that they engage in something that's going to be beneficial for them, that's really going to transform them in some small way for the better. The same thing applies here then with hosting events. Now, of course, over the past year and a half, we have seen all kinds of new virtual events come online. They're inexpensive. They allow us to be able to reach a lot more people in a lot larger perspective, but that doesn't mean that all of those are best for a digital community, okay? So for example, I've run several local meetups, and those local meetups are fairly large. We have somewhere around 1,000 plus members in some of them. And we have events that are in person, and our digital community, because we're focused on a local community, is better because people have met in person first. And so the digital community component is basically the stuff that binds them together as a group between meetings, meaning that if you don't show up for a few meetings in person, someone's going to message you in the digital space and say like, hey, what's going on, Ray? Are you okay? We haven't seen you in a while. And that level of pressure, right? That level of accountability is going to bring more people to the in-person event. So in this particular content strategy, where you want people to go ultimately determines for you how you build the community. So in that particular case, you may have in-person events, and those in-person events are where you're actually doing sales, nurturing, all of those kinds of pieces. But your community is still going to be virtual because that's the most convenient and easy way for people to be able to engage in between meetings. Now, of course, there's going to be different changes and different, ways in which people do all of this, but you can host events virtually if that's going to work for you. You can run events in person if that's going to work for you. And you can, of course, run hybrid events, those where some people are attending virtually, some people are in person, and that's going to work in different ways as well for you. And it can potentially work really well for you. Now, virtual events can be effective for B2C and B2B product and service businesses. So it doesn't really make a difference, right? If you're selling widgets, widgets are going to be just as useful in a virtual event as a service business. And what you want to really do is think about how big the event needs to be. For example, I run a personal productivity community in addition to the small business digital community. I run Web and Beyond community. And with Personal Productivity Club, I am hosting conferences, basically summits, 1 day, 2 day, 3 day summits throughout the year. And that's our lead generation, right? We're having big influxes of new members from those conferences and during those concentrated periods of time. They're coming for the conference, but they're staying for the community. And so hosting these larger events less frequently means that we have big dumps of new members, and then those new members get acclimated with the community, and then we rinse and repeat. We have those on the regular throughout the year. You may decide that you want smaller events. You maybe want to do webinars, and the webinars are the ones that just kind of trickle people in each month into the community so that people are, in the process of always joining and always getting to know the different members and so on and so forth. So you get to decide the size of the event and the breadth of the event, but understand that now you have a public facing page where people are coming and registering for the event. You host the event, and then based on that, the event registrations either automatically get invited to the community in order to attend the event. So you can host the event inside the community. So there's like there's a wall around the event, and only members of the community can attend, which means that more people will join. Or they attend the event, and then after the fact, they'll get invited to the community. And that'll happen here, right? Like, we're hosting a webinar. You are all welcome to join Web and Beyond community if you're joining us from outside of it. And now you're going to get invited to it by virtue of having attended this live event. Now, if this was just a recording, eventually this will go onto YouTube some month or two later, right? And the reality is that if you're watching this on YouTube, you'll also be engaged in wanting to join Web and Beyond community, but you have to go down to the description below in order to be able to click on that link and join. And that's a higher bar than what's going to happen now, which is that I'm going to send you an email because you attended the event and say, thanks for attending. Here goes the recording. If you want to watch it afterward, here goes the slides. And by the way, we have this Web and Beyond community that you can join. And so that's the power of being able to host an event, is that you get this live audience that you can engage with, but you also have their contact information. And now you can engage with them one-to-one. Okay, so a little bit of pulling back the curtain on Oz. So event hosting is really, really powerful, and you should certainly think about that. And remember, you don't need to be the person who is the subject matter expert at the event. You can invite other people. For example, our fall conference for my personal productivity club digital community, we have 50 speakers, right, from all different walks of our industry in that space teaching. So I'm not the focus of that at all, but it's bringing thousands and thousands of people to our email list and thousands of people to our community, ultimately, to attend the conference and to engage. So it's a very, very powerful tool for being able to give us something to talk about online, on social and elsewhere, and drive traffic to us, which doesn't cause a person to have to, have friction to wanting to sign up. They want to join. It's free to attend, or there's a small fee to attend, and they can then enjoy themselves. And in that process, meet other people like themselves. And that's so important about an event and about a community generally, right? You want to see other people like you. I'm a small business entrepreneur. I want to meet other small business entrepreneurs. Great. Joining Web and Beyond community ultimately ends up becoming a space for me to be able to do that. So this kind of community event-oriented perspective, events on the outside help bring people to events on the inside. Okay, next up is the concept of teaching. And so many people have a problem with the concept, or they are challenged by the concept of teaching. And so I have thought about this long and hard about how these three strategies, that is having and hosting challenges, how hosting events, and then ultimately how teaching classes or something like a live masterclass really helps generate a new community. And so in the teaching a class perspective, again, this is a live class. I have walked people through this so many times, and it is so powerful that really, if you have any hesitance, just let me know, and I will walk you through how to overcome that hesitance. But the steps for this are really easy. What we want to do is we want to basically develop a syllabus. And it's the same perspective. This is a free class, or a low-cost class, or a class that's very premium, depending upon your audience. So if you want to qualify people, host a class where they have to actually pay to get in. And that means those people are willing to pay to begin with. And so those are going to be ready buyers, right? Because sometimes we don't want people who just want free stuff. And so I think the masterclass is one of the best ways. Also a premium event, hosting an event and then making people pay for it. Those are also good vetters for what type of tier of client you want to have. So for example, if the people in your community, you want to be very luxury buyers, well, then don't charge nothing for your event. Maybe you charge $27 for everybody to attend. So they're willing to put down their credit card. But if you have really premium, really luxury buyers, you might charge $297 for that event for them to attend, or even $900. You name the price depending upon your audience, right? If your audience are multimillionaires, then they're going to pay those dollars to be able to attend your event. And obviously, depending upon how big and how important your event or your class is, right? So just take that into account, that pricing, it doesn't have to be free. It just has to be effective in bringing the right group of people to the table. So I tend to just end up being, and hosting free events as my mechanism for bringing as many people who I think would be useful in the community. And we'll talk a little bit about that when we talk to monetizing the platform in the next section. So we'll kind of get there, but just know you can make it free or premium at this point, as well as at the next point in terms of monetizing. But let's just pretend for this purpose, we're launching a live masterclass and we're going to make it free. And so what you're going to do now is you're going to develop a syllabus for your target audience, right? And so you're going to say, my target audience are, principals, of, middle and high schools. Okay. So I want middle school and high school principals. So I'm going to decide on developing a syllabus. And that syllabus is going to be fairly in-depth. I'm going to walk them through all the things they need to do in order to be effective as principals in their new school, right? Like, how do they get themselves set up? How do they deal with administration above them? How do they manage their teachers and students and parents in their particular environments? So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to break that into naturally 3 parts. Okay. So I kind of group those things in 3s. So we have 3 parts that kind of naturally break it apart. But if it doesn't naturally break apart, now recast your course, right? Whatever you wrote out in terms of a syllabus, break it into 3 parts. And in reality, you're only going to teach the first third in your live course. Okay. So let me walk you through this again. You're going to build out a thorough syllabus of what you would want to teach your target audience. But it's only the first third that will ultimately become your syllabus for the first course. So that first third, you're going to retool it. So that's the whole thing. Okay. So it might be, for the principal, it might be starting your new year right. And so, or starting your school year right? So that's the first part, right? Dealing with administration and folks on the regional school administration level is the second part of the syllabus, and managing your teachers, parents, and students is the third part. But those are not going to be in the live course, the live masterclass. Quite honestly, people want to test you out before they put dollars down, and also kind of want to get to know you first. And so you don't want to put people through too long and lengthy of any initial interaction or engagement with them. And that's why this idea of just choosing the first third of whatever you would ever tell anybody in that space. And then you can determine how long, right? So for one particular masterclass, I did a 5-week course. Each Monday we covered content, and it's probably a little bit overkill. I mean, I'm giving a lot of information for free in this environment. So you might just decide that it's one live masterclass, one day, and you cover it in 2 to 3 hours, and everybody joins you for those 2 hours, and you just go into all the material that people can reasonably absorb within a 2-hour time frame. Okay, and so then you're going to put up an event registration page. You'll host the live course or masterclass, and then naturally, of course, you're going to invite people at the end of that. The most important part, you're going to invite people at the end of that to join the community to be able to access the next 2 courses. The next 2 courses you're going to host inside the community. And those next 2 courses are only for community members. And the reason for that is because once you've taught them how to get started, starting the school year right topic, well, that's the base level. And the next 2 courses will build on top of that. And so you want community members who have only taken the first course to then take the second and third. And so now they're community members, and you can do all kinds of things with them. And we'll talk about that when we get to monetizing. But that's the idea here, is that we want to do some kind of live masterclass, invite them to that masterclass, convert them into a call to action directly live during the masterclass, and then of course following up with them by email afterward and saying, hey, if you're not a member of our community and you took our live masterclass, feel free to join us, because now we're going to continue this conversation. We're going to continue this coursework in the community with these next 2 levels of content. And I'd really love to have you join us. All right. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to ask me about content strategies, and we can certainly go into that. Otherwise, let's move our way on to monetizing your platform. And when it comes to monetizing your platform, there's an inherent distinction I have between having a business whereby the business's services or products are the thing that you're trying to sell, and monetizing the content itself as part of the community. Okay, so we're not talking about the business. There's just basically 2 sides of it. The business can choose to have a dominant source of revenues from the community itself, or the business can have some other line of products and services, and therefore the community is pooling people together in order to be able to sell to them that product or service over time. So we kind of think about it from those 2 avenues. Over time, sometimes that kind of gets a little bit gray, but that tends to be how I see it. So for example, with Personal Productivity Club, which is my personal productivity digital community, that's a community that is free and open to everyone. And there will be some spaces inside of it where we'll monetize, but for the most part, it's a free platform and it's just there for people to be able to enjoy. On the Web and Beyond community side, that is a free community, again, also free community, and we have lots of free content in the space, but it's purely to create brand awareness around our business. And so if there's anything that's going to be sold in the platform, it's purely going to be because of community desire, or really my desire to teach something in the platform. But really, we want people to buy our products and services that are external to the community. The community is there for the things I talked about at the beginning, right? I want to be able to have digital resilience. I want to have the ability to have a strong community support. And quite honestly, I just love the community. I just happen to professionally enjoy the people that I interact with. And I love meeting new entrepreneurs. And it's a great place to do that and provide that level of somewhat philanthropy in that space, right? I love mentoring. I love giving back in that sense. And so that community gives me that opportunity to be able to do so. So monetizing your platform, like I said, comes in these 2 flavors. So at the first side of it, you could just easily do premium entry. You can go in and you can say, everybody who's going to join my community has to pay. And you have some options there. You can give them a free trial, and after the free trial, they then get access to the community. The premium entry cannot just include entry into the community. It could also include a member discount program, whereby you go around to local businesses, local services in your area, and you say to them, hey, we're all in related fields, right? Like if I'm a yoga instructor, I can go to the Pilates instructor, I can go to the Reiki practitioner, I can go to the, or another spiritual healer, I can go to the fitness trainer that I know down the road and his fitness studio or her fitness studio. I can go to the chiropractor, the PCP, the primary care physician who has a medical practice on Main Street. I can go to all of them and say, hey, I'm building this community, and it's all of local people, but who are all health-minded, very health-focused. They're all interested. I talked to a nutritionist or a registered dietitian, and all of those people then can provide discounts, 10% off their services, 10% off their first consultation, maybe a free initial consultation of 15 minutes. And you can package all of those pieces up together. And now that becomes a part of how you charge for entry into it, and say, well, if you took advantage of all of these services in the local community, if you just purchase entry into this particular community, you're going to actually make your money back in just paying for entry by virtue of these discounts. So you can play off of that kind of piece there. It's the entertainment book, or those kinds of coupon book sales tactics. But you can also just sell based on value, right? You're going to come into the community and you're going to get value out of the people who are here in the community. I've coalesced this group of people you want to be around, right? These are business leaders. These are community experts. These are local moms just like you. These are local dads just like you. These are, whatever, right? So you determine the audience, and then by virtue of that, you're letting the audience know that people like them are in the space, and you want to pay for access to get in the room, so to speak, with those people. So premium entry is certainly one of those. At that point, if you're going to charge for entry into the room, then everything you do in terms of engagement, and we'll talk about that in the next section, but engagement then becomes free. So premium then has a determination whether it's one time or whether it's ongoing. So you might decide that you're going to have people pay a monthly or annual fee for membership, or you're going to have them pay a one-time fee and then they're just a member forever. And that's just, again, you have to make those choices in terms of your circumstance. And again, if you have any questions about that, let me know. Then we have the free entry. Okay. And so what we typically call complimentary entry. So premium and complimentary, basically fee and free, or paid and free. And so complimentary entry or free entry into the community is one way you can do it. And that's how I've chosen to do it with Web and Beyond community. You can sign up. You do have to wait for me to approve you into the community, because I want to make sure the people who are entering the community are of high quality and not just bots or spammers or scammers. And so I do look at every person who's joining the community and determine that they're really a small business owner and they can come into the community. It's a little bit slower for me because I have to look at every person, but it is what it is. Either way, you could just let anybody in who has come through one of those three vehicles fairly easily. And that's how I do it, right? If you've attended a virtual event, a masterclass, a course that I've taught, or you've done one of our challenges, you're ideal to enter the community. And so therefore, I'm going to bring people in through those vehicles much easier than someone just going to webandbeyond.community and signing up to join, right? And so, especially since most people try to fill out those forms very quickly, they don't actually detail, like, this is my business and this is what I do and this is why I want to join the community. And so there's a vetting process that anybody who just shows up to your community page needs to go through in order for them to be effective. And I find that to be one of the number one problems with free entry, that if you're going to do that, you need to make sure that you have an effective vetting strategy, so that if people do try to join through non-content strategy perspectives, then you are going to do that. You're going to have some mechanism for being able to filter them out. So maybe they fill out a form and then they get invited into the community. Maybe if it's a really, really concentrated group of people, you may actually have a video interview, a short video consultation with them. And then once they have, made your standard, then you can invite them into the community. So there are different ways in which you can do that. Of course, with free entry into the community, you have to have some way to monetize. And so when we think about free entry, we then think about it from the perspective of what inside of the community can we create as premium access beyond just entering. So getting in the door, you don't have to shell out any money. But once you're in the community, then there can be other places. So for example, inside of my personal productivity community, I have a paid course, right? And so people could actually purchase that paid course inside the community. We also have a co-working space. So just like a physical co-working space, we have a digital co-working space, and people can come into the virtual co-working space, and it's an accountability space where people can not only have, it's see some smiling faces who are also working. We're all muted. We're all, on camera and doing our thing and just working, but there's a level of accountability, there's camaraderie, there's just a great experience of being in that space and seeing familiar faces while you're working, especially if you do work from home. And certainly during the pandemic, it's been difficult, but I believe that even after the pandemic, it's just helpful to have that level of a group of people you can just dial into. We have sessions throughout the week where people can join and have that really, nice experience of working and then turning off, taking a break, and coming back and working again. So you can have that kind of premium access inside the community and really make sure that you are doing the right things for helping people understand that, yes, it's a complimentary access to the community generally, but inside maybe you have paid events, maybe you have paid masterminds, Maybe you have paid smaller groups of people. And so therefore you have these smaller groupings that in order to get into those, you have to be a community member, but then you also then get to pay to be inside of this smaller exclusive access. We have a small business resources library inside of Web and Beyond community. And so people can pay a couple bucks and get access to all of my recorded webinars and recorded presentations that I do around the web all the time. And they're usually in exclusive communities, but I just take them once I've done them. If they've been recorded, I just put them into the small business resources library so that people can go back and look at all of those various content pieces. And so it's not cluttering the main community. And so if people want access to those things, and I'll be making PDF digital guides and worksheets and other kinds of things, all of that's going to go inside of the small business resources library, and people will pay just a nominal fee to have access to it. So free community, but premium access to the resources library. So you can do different things like that as you make your way along in developing the community. I see some questions coming in. I'm going to hold those to the end just because I have a little bit more material to cover, but I'll circle back to the questions. Just don't you worry. I see questions in both of the panels, and I will circle back. Okay, so next up, just very briefly, sponsorship and advertising. This is one of those cases where if you are in an environment where you do have marketing alliances and you can place display advertising, think about how Facebook or Instagram display ads. You can basically do that in your own private community platform. You can totally do that. One thing you can do is what I call self-sponsorship, which is that you're not going to have ads from anyone else other than your own business. So you have this captive audience, and now at strategic times, you can go ahead and let people know about your business and its services in an appropriate way. That could just be display ads. It could be having some branding around the community, right? Like for example, Web and Beyond community, the branding is all similar to our web services, to our consulting business. It just all looks the same, and that's just helping people create some awareness and familiarity with our brand. You can also do donations. And I don't recommend like a tip jar that is not recurring, just like a one-time tip jar. I do usually recommend people to have a recurring revenue source if they're going to do any level of monetization of their platform, just because then it ends up being more work than it's worth to get, $10 every quarter from somebody who then has a problem with their payment processing and they need your help with it. You've spent more money just trying to help them make it work than the recurring revenue that you're going to receive. But you could do donations. People really enjoy and appreciate the work people do, and then some group of those people will be willing to remunerate you for that work. And so donations can really work. So it's free, but if you want to give us some money, here goes a way to be able to do so, and that just helps defray the costs of the platform, or actually makes you revenues, and you can do that as well. And then last but not least is the idea of monetizing the content that is typically off platform. So you can take this as an example of, say, creating a Substack and doing a paid newsletter. So the community is there and the community can interact and enjoy all the things that you're doing in terms of community engagement, but maybe you have a newsletter on the side, and that's where you publish your in-depth reviews of the content or industry or products and services that you are providing to people, and they would pay to have access to that thing. Or maybe you have a YouTube channel, and so the YouTube channel has monetized content, right? You have to have 1,000 followers, and then you can turn on YouTube content video monetization. And then at that point, you are able to go ahead and direct people from your community to YouTube in order to watch those videos, and then you get paid by YouTube by the views. You could also do courses that are off the platform. I'm going to be talking about a platform very shortly, some of the platforms you can use. And in those platforms, I have the ability inside of mine to basically host courses. I think I talked about that before. And so those courses that are hosted in the platform are inside the platform. So I can charge for the courses. It's kind of like the premium access to more inside the free entry, but in this particular case, you could do a Thinkific or have a Teachable account outside of the community and then direct people to it in order to take advantage of that course and charge them for it. So you can monetize in all kinds of ways in that sense. So those are the content strategies. We have the ability to do some kind of premium entry. We can do any level of different types of complementary entries with some other kind of premium add-on after the fact. And so let's now talk a little bit about getting started with a community, and then we'll do Q&A. I promise I'll answer everybody's questions. But what I wanted to do is just talk through what are some of those things that you can do to get started for greater success when it comes to building out a community where you will get paid. So number one is understand really what your target audience's true problem is. So often than not, what I see are communities built around a product or service, when in reality, you're being too limited, right? Like if I have a particular product or service that I like buying, like bubblegum, well, why would I want to join a community about bubblegum unless I was super, super into just bubblegum, right? I just buy bubblegum when I want to chew bubblegum, right? But if I were more interested in sweets generally, or in healthy living, then maybe you can engage me in joining a community around healthy sweets, healthy snacks. That might be a little bit more usable in your community, in your local community, with your digital community, than it is to just talk about that one particular product or service. So think typically broader in terms of your niche for the type of community that you're going to be running. Also think categorically different. So for example, if I were a virtual assistant company, right, and I was providing virtual assistant services, I would probably start a community around entrepreneurship, right? And it would be easy to start talking about different topics around entrepreneurship, operations and marketing and startup and funding and so on and so forth, because entrepreneurs will need virtual assistants. And once they're talking about things that are important to them, they will also learn about how much they have to do. And that pain will lead them to wanting to hire a virtual assistant. So remember their true problem. In the case of the virtual assistants, small business entrepreneurs become time starved. And in order to be able to overcome that time starvation, they will hire out services that they need to be handled. And a virtual assistant is one of those pieces of the puzzle that can make that happen. So understand your target audience's true problem and look to create the community mission that fits that. Two, how are you going to lead your audience to the community? Utilizing one of those three content strategies, a challenge, an event, or a course. Or are you going to do something else? Some mashup, some different element? Are you going to run ads maybe for doing that? That is one way to do it. But how will you lead your audience to your community? That's a really big component of getting started. And then finally, not finally, but next is the idea of ongoing engagement. You have to actually do things with the people in the community, or otherwise they don't come back. And so this is the other real difficulty about building a community, and one that you should really consider over the long term, which is, what does that ongoing engagement look like for being able to get your community members coming back on a regular basis? And that usually means doing some level of one of those content strategies on the regular inside the community as well. That is hosting an event or hosting events on the regular, getting people to engage with challenges, and then of course, hosting courses or some other kind of learning environments where people are going to be able to come back and enjoy that over and over again. Next, and this is really important in getting started with a community, is start to identify community members who you can elevate. What I mean by elevating is giving them roles within the community. So just like in a family unit, you have mom and dad, grandma and grandpa, aunts and uncles, and the children, and then cousins even, and everybody in the family kind of has a role in the family. People become the matriarch or the patriarch of their families, not just by randomness. They do it by effort, and people then give them that power to be able to be the organizer in the family, the person who's always capable of dealing with, crazy Uncle Joe. All of those community members in that family have these particular roles. And we know from the research that communities need those members to come together and really to be able to thrive. And so you as the business owner need to be able to identify customer and brand advocates. You need to be able to identify people who are going to be able to take over in a pinch for you when you can't do things. You might find other subject matter experts who can be elevated to be able to teach on the platform, and then you can pay them or give them free access to other parts of the platform for being able to do that. That's one way that I do it in Personal Productivity Club. I elevate people who are volunteering to help out in the community, and then I give them free access. It's just a nice token of appreciation for them to, be helping out in the community. And so learn how to elevate community members, and this really helps create and strengthen bonds so that people want to stay, and those people then end up creating a more virtuous cycle of bringing new people into the platform and keeping people as well. Next, we want to know, how will you convert community members to customers, right? So you're going to get people into your audience to the community. Once the community is there and they're community members, well, how are you going to convert them into customers? You really need to determine that. What is the sales funnel? Once you've got that pool of people together, how are you going to turn them into business? Next is that you need to choose your platform, and you need to set that platform up. And so you have several options. One is, and these are just the top three options I think about off the top of my head, right? Which is Mighty Networks. Mighty Networks is a fantastic tool that allows you to be able to have a web, Android, iOS, and iPad app all out the gate. So you have the web desktop version, you have the Android, iOS, and iPad app just perfectly designed and developed for you to be able to utilize out the gate. I think it's probably world-class, best-in-class currently tool. It's nascent yet, like all of these other tools that are trying to kind of challenge the Facebook model of having everybody in a public social network. This is a private social network platform where you can put your own domain. You can bring people onto the platform. They can install the app and be on the go and interact and engage. They just have a lot of really great features. And so if you have any questions, I'd be happy to give anybody who uses my link to join Mighty Networks. I'm an affiliate for Mighty Networks. If you use my link, I'd be happy to give a 30-minute initial consultation just to get you up and running and understanding the power of Mighty Networks. Then the competitor to that, really, I think the best next competitor is Circle.so. And Circle.so is really great. It's a community platform. It allows you to do a lot of the things the Mighty Networks does. They don't yet have an Android app, which is why I consider them second best, but they're doing a lot of really good stuff in the application. So I know they're working on an Android app, and that should hopefully be out. But yeah, but Circle.so has some really, really cool functionality akin to Mighty Networks. And it may just be also, from an aesthetic perspective, a little bit different. And therefore that might be more useful to people who are maybe used to Slack and that kind of Slackish design aesthetic. And then last but not least is the idea of baking your community directly into your website. So in this particular case, if you have a WordPress website, you can use tools like Memberful and Peepso, or some combination of those plugins in order to do so. There are links to all of this in the slides, but you would host your WordPress website. You have to have a beefy hosting account. You can't go with any one of those shared hosting accounts in order to do this kind of thing, because there's a lot of traffic that comes to a community platform. So you'd have to have a VPS or better in terms of being able to manage that kind of WordPress installation. But then Memberful and Peepso do a really great job of basically embedding a community forum and space where people can pay or just enter and then have select access to different groups and channels within the platform. So you choose your platform and you set it up. And then last but not least, you start your content strategy. You get your front end going to get people into the front door. And so really, really, that is how you do it. You're going to define your true audience problem. You're going to lead your audience to your community using the content strategy, number 7. And number 2, number 3, you're going to define what the ongoing engagement strategy is. You're going to elevate your community members as needed, and you're going to figure out how to convert community members to customers. Then you're going to choose your platform, because it's only after those first 5 that you then know what features you need in order for you to choose your platform. You choose your platform and set it up, and then you will ultimately then start your content strategy and start the pipeline of getting target audience members to join your community. And so with that, let's hop into some Q&A, and I can answer questions. If you're inside of the webinar channel, then feel free to post your questions there, and I'll see them here on my other device. If you're joining me from within Zoom, ask your questions in the chat, and I will read those as well. So let's start out with some of these questions, and then I'm going to close out. Actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to close us out just in case you do need to leave and drop off now. Here goes my contact information, and you can go ahead and follow us on all the socials. You can email me there at ray@w3cinc.com. That's W, the number 3, CINC.com. And then, of course, we have a podcast, and we have our live stream weekly on Mondays at webandbeyondlive.com. And so you can join us on Mondays, and I talk about all things digital marketing that I'm thinking about each week. So if you have to go, it's been a pleasure. We'll shoot you an email with the slides and with the recording so you can listen to it again if you need to. But back to Q&A then. And so let's start here. So Deborah's asking, how do the other businesses in your community, i.e. yoga instructors, medical doctors, benefit from your personal productivity or web and beyond community? So I would probably not, I wouldn't say that they necessarily benefit from, like, the other businesses in my community don't necessarily benefit from it in the personal productivity side, but in the web and beyond community side, it's a networking opportunity. So, I love bringing together business owners, which means that they can network with other business owners. Plus, say that you're a yoga instructor and you need a graphic designer. Well, someone in the community who's a graphic designer is now a potential, business partner. You can go and say, hey, you know what? I'd really love to put together a new book, like an illustrated guide to this particular type of yoga that I practice. And now you can partner up with them in order to be able to do those things. Or maybe you just need some graphic design work done. And so you can go ahead and find someone who you're familiar with. And once you get to know them, then hire them for those services. So I really feel like the businesses in any group are capable of networking with one another. And it's another thing that we do in Web and Beyond community, which is we host these virtual small business roundtables. So we're giving everybody every month an opportunity to network with each other. And I just feel like that's a good, vehicle for being able to get people to connect with one another, because we know that when individual members bond with one another, then the community stays more vibrant. Good question. And then you had a second question here, Deborah. It says, when advertising a course and the syllabus covers the first third, so they join the community for the second and third parts, do you advertise all 3 parts initially? No, you actually don't. And this is the cool part, which is like, or not cool part, but it's just like the psychology of it. People are very easily overwhelmed. And so you want their transformation, what you're selling them, to be the small part, right? You just want them to know what it is that they can do on that level. And by virtue of that, you're not selling them on anything other than what they're going to get during that course. It's at the end of the course where you then give the secondary component there and say, hey, if you want to go further, now that you've seen me, you've gotten to know me, you've gotten to, spend a little bit of time with me, you kind of get to know my personality, right? And once you get to know my personality, you'll realize whether or not, I'm the type of person you want to spend more time with. And it's at that point then that you can go ahead and increase and engage with them in that sense. Okay. I'm getting a question here about the platforms. So, okay, so these are the 3 platforms. I put them back up on screen for you. And so, so Mighty Networks, Circle.so, and then WordPress with multiple plugins. And your question's about the plugins. Yeah, those are actually plugins, and they are just different types of plugins. So Memberful is a premium plugin, meaning that you'd have to pay for it. Peepso has a community version, but if you're going to create a community, a premium community, or really any community that's going to be worth its time, you're going to end up wanting to pay for the higher version because it gives you a lot of other features that you're going to want. And so Memberful, I think, is like a monthly or annual fee. Peepso, I believe, is a one-time cost, but then you can continue to keep paying them for updates and security updates and so on and so forth. So it ends up being a annual-ish fee. And so, but there are other ones. I mean, these are just 2 of the ones that I tend to see clients using. There are definitely other ones that are out there that can work within WordPress. But like I said, make sure that you talk to your web host, or you could talk to us and we can help you with your hosting to make sure you have a strong enough underpinning of hosting for that. And if you don't think you're going to be able to do that just price wise, then I would go ahead and go to something like Mighty Networks or Circle, where you can just make a community.yourbusinessname.com and get around the whole problem of, will my hosting be beefy enough to be able to support that, because now you can just use their platform and they're going to handle all of those back-end pieces for you. But if you really want to bake it yourself, let us know and we can always work with you to figure those components out. Okay, so other questions. You are welcome, Deborah. And then, okay, I'm just scrolling through here through the questions to see which ones I can answer before we close out. And if I don't answer your question, I will go ahead and respond to you via email. So I want to pick out the ones that are biggest ticket items. Yeah, so there's a question here about the community content strategies and which one should you start with. I am of the opinion that it depends upon your business. And so if your business is in such a place where you have no idea who your target audience is, then I tend to believe that events are a better way to help you manage who your audience will be. The idea, because you're seeing the people who are attending your events, and that's going to, like, during Q&A and during interactions with them, you're going to have a better sense of who the people are once you host an event. A little bit different than challenges where you're emailing them, and so you're communicating outbound, but not really getting a lot of interaction. And so you don't actually get to know who those people are, unless in the challenge you ask a lot of questions, but then that reduces the number of people who are going to actually join the challenge. So I tend not to say challenges for those who don't know who their ideal target audience is. And then, of course, for courses, you really want to pay attention that if you're going to do a course, and as I said before, virtual events are for B2C and B2B product companies. The challenges tend to work with B2B and B2C service businesses. And then courses, again, fit into that category of like coaches and consultants and other kinds of service businesses where there's really a knowledge and a knowledge capacity there, that knowing something is what you're selling in that way, right? So like, just like those kinds of professions. And so, like, also understand that your audience is going to be built around the people who would want to come to those things. So, if you're teaching something, then, and you're naturally inclined to teach something, then you probably should do a course. But if you're not naturally inclined to teach something, then a challenge is probably a better way to go about it, because it gives you the chance to, not in a live environment, but in a time oriented environment, record video, write instructions, those kinds of things, and you could do multiple takes. Whereas if you're doing a live instruction like we are now, then if you're uncomfortable with this kind of interaction, you're going to have some struggle there, and it's just you're not going to be your best self in front of everybody if you get nervous, or if you don't feel like you're going to be able to handle a tough question here or there, and so on and so forth. All right, everybody, we have reached almost 10 after, and I want to be respectful of everybody's time. And so I appreciate everybody joining here today. This has been a lot of fun. Of course, if you want to, you can go ahead and join our community at www.webandbeyond.community. Community is the top level domain, so you can go to .community. And thanks for joining. And you can follow us on the socials. I'm really on Twitter more than I am anywhere else, but feel free to follow us on any of the socials. And like I said, I know there's a bunch of questions here. I will go ahead and answer all of those via email. But otherwise, thank you to everyone who joined us here for the Web and Beyond webinars series, and see you next time.